Let's queer up civil rights. Guess which country supports marriage equality the most? New Pew Research Center analysis shows that Western European countries are most heavily in favor of marriage equality. Pew has conducted surveys in 32 countries in the past 2 years. Support was highest in Sweden, where 92% of respondents favored equal marriage rights for same-sex couples. Other countries in Western Europe were not far behind, with 89% support in the Netherlands, 87% in Spain, 82% in France, and 80% in Germany. Each of those countries has legalized same-sex marriage. In Italy, where legalization is being debated but hasn't yet happened, 73% of respondents endorsed marriage equality. In the United Kingdom, support stood at 74%, and all parts of the UK have enacted marriage equality. The situation was much different in the Eastern European countries. Pew has surveyed with just 41% support in Poland and 31% in Hungary. In North America, 79% of Canadians and 63% of both U.S. residents and Mexicans backed marriage equality. In the U.S., there were stark differences along party lines. 82% of Democrats and Democrat-leaning independents were supportive, compared to 44% of Republicans and Republican leaners. So,
a lot.
Surprise, surprise, I always blame this on the Pilgrims. We just had Thanksgiving. If those damn Puritans and separatists didn't make their way over here and started our country about 20 years behind England, we would be caught up. And it's no surprise that wherever Western Europe is heading, that's where we will be in about 20 years.
You know what sort of scares me about that statement, though, is that, and I know you meant it well, but the rightward shift is happening now in Western Europe. The Netherlands just last weekend voted in a very right-wing, anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim government, essentially their prime minister and his governing majority. So I'm afraid that when you say what's happening in Western Europe will be us in 20 years, I'm afraid that will be true, but for the wrong reason.
We had that a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's where we were.
It goes in those shifts. You know, Argentina just had, elected their right-wing crazy, but Brazil just voted theirs
The guy
out.
who talks to his dead dog, right?
Yeah. So we're going through this kind of weird cyclical thing with conservative and...
Well, they say, the arc of justice bends in the right direction. So it varies, but it always bends in the right direction. So let's just hope that, we'll, like the markets, it'll
bounce back. It'll bounce back.
Yeah.
Ty, you're as queer as they come, and you've got to teach. You've had to teach at some of these, in some of these places. How does this wash over you?
So I don't know, how does it wash over me? It just, all over the place, yeah. So I think that, it's kind of to Cindy's point, the pendulum swings. And, it's interesting to see how far we're going to go in one direction before we go in the other. I'm surprised at the 44% of conservatives. I thought that number was big.
I actually was surprised it wasn't bigger because there are a lot of Republicans, and I thought it was more than 44%, that support LGBT rights, and it's just sad to think that 56% of Republicans, I mean, the majority of Republicans don't.
Well, a couple of years ago, it was over 50% for Republicans. As Republicans have made it their platform to voraciously go after trans rights, LGBTQ rights, marriage equality, it's eroded on that side. But you're right, it was a bigger number as recently as like 2019.
And that also could be a result of people leaving the party.
Yeah. Or leaving the country.
Or the way that the question was asked, because a lot of times they frame it differently.
Yeah.
Right.
Before, if they were saying, do you believe in marriage equality, versus like the way they may have framed the question this time about with all
if you want to marry your dog, is it okay?
But I imagine they asked the same question to the Democrats as they asked to the Republicans the same way.
But different surveys, though. Different survey to survey, it needs continuity.
Exactly.
But yes, you're absolutely right.
Because conservatives have been voting largely against the anti-abortion and gay marriage, you know, what's it they're saying in the polls is different than what's going on in the survey poll. So,
but more to your point, Faye, because you just got back from a trip and you were in England. When I'm in Western Europe, I feel far more welcomed.
Yeah.
As a
well,
queer
and
person
it's
than-
interesting because most of our tour guides were LGBTQ, right? And that's how they wanted it, right? And every time I had a chance to be able to sit with an LGBTQ plus local, I asked them, how is it to be queer here? You know, and it's like, we don't fight for our rights, we just are. You know, they kind of just stay under the radar, you know, like it's like, we're fine how we are, you know, and they don't want to, because they have bigger fish to fry in their minds.
Right.
You know, so maybe that also leads to why the percentages are how they are.